Hello, everyone. It's so great to be here. I want to talk to you today, after I get the frog out of my throat, I want to talk to you today about food. And the truth is that when you're struggling with gut issues, food can feel really tricky. And so much so, what we find is that a lot of people get hung up on thinking that food is causing their symptoms, and they're trying to figure out what foods are causing the reactions, but they can't quite seem to pinpoint it because they eat something one day and they feel fine, and then they eat it the next day and they bloat up like they're pregnant. And so it gets really frustrating. And what ends up happening is they take out more and more and more foods, and before they know it, they have no foods left to eat. And one of two things happens at this point. One, you either go, fuck it, the hell with it. I'm gonna eat whatever I want because I can't seem to figure out what's causing the problem, and it doesn't seem to matter. No matter what I eat, my gut is angry. So you either fall into that camp, right? Or you go swinging all the way to the other end of the pendulum and you get into super restrictions. You're eating hyper clean. You're not eating so much as a lick of sugar. You're avoiding gluten like the plague. And even though you're eating super clean, you're still finding that your gut issues are not going away. And this is why food feels so tricky. But I am here to tell you today that food is not the problem. Your gut is. In fact, you likely have some sort of damage, deficiency, or infection that's going on inside your gut that's causing these food reactions, not the food. And because of that, because food is not really the problem, food actually gets to be the easiest part. I know it doesn't feel that way, but stay with me here, because what I'm going to walk you through today, we're actually going to be reviewing food journals live from members of our group inside the Love Your Guts IBS support group. And we're going to go through and help them understand, help them really unpack where they're getting hung up on food, how they can balance out their food and get it dialed in so that they can focus on the real work to fixing their gut. You see, before we dive in, if you don't know who I am, my name is Alyssa Lebrecq, and I'm a functional diagnostic nutritionist and gut expert. I've worked with over 1,000 clients worldwide in our Love and Trust Your Guts program. In other words, I have looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of test results. And what I continue to see, data back from the body, not just like guessing, not like, your symptoms seem to be telling me, not, oh, well, I looked at you and I decided, which is common for other practitioners and doctors. They just look at you and make an assumption. I've looked at the data coming back from hundreds and hundreds of people, and what it continues to tell me is that food is not the problem. Whether we are seeing some type of infection or those infections are causing deficiencies like enzyme production is being hindered or minerals are being, a lack of absorption of minerals, whether we're seeing elevated toxic levels in the body, no matter what is going on that's impacting the functionality of the body, it is never food that is causing the problem. There's something going on that's interrupting your body's functionality, and that is what is causing your body to react to foods. Okay, so we want to go a little bit deeper. And so this is why I want to help make food simple again, because so many people are getting distracted trying to fixate on the food. It's preventing you from doing the real work you need to do to actually fix your gut. It's preventing you from really figuring out what infections are present in my gut, right? It's preventing you from figuring out what damage. Is there leaky gut? Is there ulcerations in the gut? Is there inflammation? Is there immune dysregulation? What is going on in there in the way of damage? Are there deficiencies? Is your gut producing enough digestive enzymes to break down the foods that you are eating? We got to figure out those questions. And until we do, you're going to be stuck with your symptoms. So let's get food out of the way. Let's make food easy so that, again, you can move on to the more important work when it comes to fixing your gut. And that's what's really inspired this series that we're going to be doing here. We're going to start reviewing food journals live so that we can help you figure out food and let it be simple. Help you get out of the weeds, let it feel less anxiety inducing, and help you feel confident about the foods that are safe to eat. Okay, so let's dive in with that. we've got a couple of food journals that we're going to go through today. I had a bunch that were submitted. I think we're going to have time to probably review 2, and the purpose of that is so we can do a really good job, but also so that we can give you some real takeaway lessons. Although I'm reviewing other people's food journals, there's some really important lessons that everyone needs to know and can take away when it comes to their gut. And because I've looked through the food journals already, I have a pretty good idea of the theme that I'm seeing, at least amongst the food journals that were submitted for this particular live. And that is, we need to talk about protein. We need to talk about protein in a few different ways. We need to talk about the fear when it comes to consuming protein. I hear so often from people that they feel like their gut isn't breaking down protein. So, if you're anything like I was early on in my stages of gut issues, one of the many things that I tried was I actually went vegan for several years, which I don't recommend. In fact, we won't even work with vegans in our program, plant-based eaters, and that's a whole other conversation as to why that is. Happy to answer those questions later. But going vegan, going plant-based is actually not the way that you're going to fix your gut. Because remember, it's not that protein is the problem, it's that your gut is likely struggling to break it down. And so one of the women that submitted their food journals today had shared with me that she was really scared to add more protein in. And so we're actually going to see there's not a lot of protein happening in her diet. And one of the reasons that she was concerned about that is she noticed she bloats after every meal. And I know many of you can relate to that, right? You're eating and you bloat. You eat, you bloat. So of course it feels like food is the problem. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about stomach acid and, understanding our enzymes and what may be going on there. Okay, so let's start with the food journal. We'll kind of pepper in these lessons as we go. The first food journal I want to go through today is Paula's. And Paula, thank you for sharing your food journal here. I'm going to be just reading it off to everyone. And I want everyone to kind of take a listen into what Paula's having, but also what might be missing. Okay, so a little bit of context here. When I look at a food journal, when I'm looking to balance someone's plate, there's 4 key categories that you need to have at every single meal. And this is gold right here, so you need to grab a pen and write this shit down, all right? Here's the thing. We're not macro counting. We're not calorie counting. We're not doing any of that stuff, okay? Because you need each of these food groups in your diet. And the reason you need all of the food groups in your diet is because they all play an integral role in supporting your body. Okay, so we're not going to go down to the extremes of the carnivore world where vegetables literally have chemicals that are killing us. No. And we're not going to go down to the keto world where carbohydrates are killing us. No. We're not doing that here, okay? You've tried that before, and all it did was cost you your mental health, all right? So just a quick breakdown. In every single meal, you need to have a protein, a fat, a carb, and a vegetable. Every meal. Non-negotiable. That is the foundation of your health. Before you get making any advanced nutrition moves, you need to get your plate balanced, okay? Now, with that, protein, fat, carb, vegetable. Each of these are going to play a different role. So protein is essential for muscle function. And guess what? Your gut is a muscle. If you want your gut functioning, you need protein. Protein is the building blocks to muscles in the body, okay? So that's the first thing. You need fats. Fats are integral. They're a lubricant, right? They lube up the body. So if you're constipated, you need some lube, right? If you are struggling with brain fog, fatigue, memory issues, irritability, you probably need to lube up your noodle, right? We need healthy fats. They're part of what reduces inflammation. They're part of what helps keep the body lubricated, but they're also a really important part in helping to absorb certain key nutrients. In fact, your fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D, guys, we're in the dead of winter. You need vitamin D, but you need fats to be able to absorb these fat-soluble vitamins. So fats are also really important. And no, fats don't make you fat, all right? Fats make you smart. They lube your noodle, all right? Okay, proteins, fats, we need carbs. Oh my Lord, carbs are not the problem, okay? What's the problem is when we are missing certain food categories, we tend to overeat others, right? Let me give you a classic example, pasta. Everyone loves pasta, right? But what tends to happen is we overconsume our pasta because we're under eating our vegetables and our protein typically, right? If we think about like a pasta sauce, even if you're making like a red sauce with a bit of ground beef in it, there's certainly not a full 3 to 5 ounces, depending on the person, of ground beef in your sauce. You're getting little remnants of ground beef in your sauce, right? So we're not getting enough protein. Vegetables, it's usually a little bit of meat sauce and a whole shit ton of noodles, right? So, okay, there's a little bit of vegetable in the tomato sauce, I'll give you that, but there's certainly not 1 to 2 cups of vegetable with that meal, right? So then what happens is, because we're under eating our protein and our vegetable typically, then our pasta portion ends up doubling, tripling, quadrupling to make up for the missing categories. And so a little bit of a tidbit here, your carbohydrate in the way of pasta, 1 serving of pasta is a 1/2 a cup. I know, for the pasta lovers, that feels like next to nothing. Depending on your activity level, your height, weight, age, activity level, you might need 2 portions in a day. So 1 cup, or not a day, sorry, at a meal. So 1 cup. But most people are eating 2, 3, 4 cups of pasta. They're having a big bowl with a bunch of tomato sauce on top, right? So we're overeating our carbohydrate because we're under eating our other categories. So I wanted to just give you a bit of context there. Every meal, we need a protein, fat, carb, vegetable, because each of them play a certain role in nourishing the body. And the second thing is, if you miss certain food categories, you will overeat others. And this is where we start to get into gut issues. So carbohydrates are not the problem. The problem is, as a society, especially in North America, we tend to way overeat our carbohydrates. And this is where we get into digestive issues, blood sugar issues, inflammation issues. Anything in excess is excess, too much, not great for the body. So don't fear carbohydrates. We got to get them back in balance and get these other categories filled in, okay? So you need energy. You especially need energy to heal. You're gonna need carbohydrates on your healing journey, okay? And the last category is vegetables. Vegetables kind of speak for themselves. I mean, they're fibrous, they help to keep the intestines clean, but most importantly, they provide us with our micronutrients, so vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. So these help to nourish the body. And so we really want to make sure we're getting veggies at each meal too. All right, so that's the lens in which I'm looking through when I go to review a food journal. So let's start with Paula's food journal here. Up first for breakfast, we have here 1 cup of oatmeal, peanut butter, 2 tablespoons peanut butter, 1 medium banana, there's some almond milk in there, and some ground flax. Okay, so just quickly here, protein, fat, carb, vegetable, right? So oatmeal, there's your carbohydrate. Peanut butter. Quick trick question here, is peanut butter a protein? Let me know in the comments. Let me know. Do peanuts or peanut butter or nuts in general count as a protein? All right, the answer is no. They are a fat. All right, so peanut butter, peanuts, nuts as a whole, first of all, every single food, including spinach and apples, have a little bit of protein in them. And so sure, peanuts, nuts, they have a little bit of protein in them, but it's not enough for it to count as a full serving of protein at a meal. Okay, so peanuts actually peanut butter falls under the fat category. All right, so just keep that in mind. So far we got a carb, we got a fat. We got bananas, all right? So I didn't talk about fruits earlier, but vegetable/fruit at breakfast. Okay, we got a fruit. Almond milk is gonna be like a freebie, okay? And then ground flaxseed is a fat, all right? So extra fibrous lubricant fat, great for constipation, okay? So far, what category are we missing, guys? We're missing a protein. All right, now Paula had shared with me earlier, one of the things, again, she was struggling with is fear of protein, but also bloating after meals. And so let's talk about this particular meal. One, know that food is not the problem. However, when we're looking at the gut and when there's specific food reactions after certain meals, sometimes it can help point us in the direction of what may be going on inside the gut that's causing the reaction. So she had shared that she had got quite a lot of bloating after this meal. And here's what I have to say about that. In some cases, when we're working with certain gut infections like SIBO, like parasites, these types of bacteria don't love fibrous foods. Okay, so in the case of these types of infections, when fiber is introduced via oatmeal or ground flax, sometimes vegetables, it depends on how sensitive you are. These types of bacteria have a field day, can really drum up gas, bloating, abdominal pain, constipation, diarrhea, depending on what type of infection, what type of SIBO, whether you have methane or hydrogen, will determine which end of the spectrum your bowels go. But we have to sometimes be careful with fibrous food when the gut infection is still present, which is why I always say food is not the problem, because until we get rid of the gut infection, then the food remains the problem essentially, right? Until we get rid of the infection that's reacting to the food, then when you eat, you're going to react. So in this case, I would suggest actually try swapping out the ground flaxseed and the oatmeal. And you can still use like the peanut butter or almond butter for your fats. You still have a fat present. And instead of the oatmeal, another carb alternative would be, I would stick to like a grain-free option and just see how you feel. Sweet potato, for example. One of my favorite things to do is roast sweet potatoes in the oven, lots of cinnamon, and it like caramelizes them. It brings out the sweetness, and oh my goodness, it's so good. And what you can do is sub that instead of the oatmeal, do the sweet potatoes. Right? So a little bit of roasted sweet potato with that cinnamon will be your carb. We still have the peanut butter, drizzle that on top. Oh, with the cinnamon and then the banana. I'm like, my mouth is watering now, okay? You could use a little bit of almond milk in there, or we're still missing a protein. And remember, protein is the building blocks for your muscles. And so in this case, you might like to work on adding some kind of protein in there. So what you could do is either get some protein powder and blend that up with your almond milk and pour that on top, make it like a bit of a cereal. Or if you tolerate dairy, you could do some grass-fed Greek yogurt. Or you could scramble up some eggs and toss that scrambled eggs with, you've got your cinnamon, roasted sweet potatoes. You could even fry up your bananas. Like that would also be really, really delicious. So that would be the first adjustment that I would make, and see how you feel after that meal. Okay. Now let's go on to your next meal here. Lunch, hot tea, gluten-free banana blueberry bread. Okay. So remember guys, we need a protein, fat, carb, vegetable. What's missing? We've got gluten-free banana, blueberry bread. So there's going to be a carb and there's some fruit. What are we missing here? We're missing protein, we're missing a fat, right? So here's the thing, Paula, with all the love. I mean this with all the love. And you're not alone in this. So many people are trying to starve themselves healthy because they're scared to eat. And they're sticking to their safe foods or the comfort foods. And because they're under eating, it's kind of like driving on a road trip with no gas in your gas tank. And then you're wondering why the car's broken down on the side of the road, you had to pull over, and you're not getting to your destination, right? Super frustrating. But we can't expect the car to go if there's no gas in the gas tank. We can't expect the body to heal if there's no fuel for it to heal. And so there's always going to be those one-off days where we don't quite nail all of our categories, but I do just want to say, like, hey, this lunch, we really need to get it balanced out. So protein, protein, protein. Let's talk about protein, because this is the number one thing that I'm seeing in your meal plan that's missing. And so, as I mentioned earlier, what happens when we're under eating a category, in this case, protein, you're under eating, we overeat other categories. And so the category I'm seeing that you're overeating is carbohydrates, right? At dinner time, let's talk about dinner. You had scalloped potatoes, baked beans, garden salad, and there's a balsamic dressing. Now, beans can fall under the, more plant-based protein option, but they are quite carby in nature. So that's a real carb-heavy meal still, and there's really not a lot of protein happening. So at every single meal on this particular day, there was no protein happening. So I want to talk about protein here, guys. If you're someone, and let me know in the comments if this is you, do you suspect that you have low stomach acid? Now, if you're like, what is low stomach acid? So stomach acid is an enzyme that's produced by our gut to help break down proteins. Kind of goes in like a little Pac-Man and helps to break down our proteins so we can absorb the nutrients and utilize the nutrients, right? Now, low stomach acid essentially means that the gut is what we call underactive. It's not able to keep up with digestion. It can't break down all of these foods, particularly protein, because there isn't enough of the enzyme. And most of the time I'll hear people say, I think I'm low in stomach acid. And so the question is, and this question came from Paula too, is, I think I have low stomach acid. That's why I'm nervous to eat protein. And so the question that I get asked is like, how do I know? And the answer, guys, is testing. It is testing, right? We don't have a magic wand. We can make some assumptions based off of symptoms, but the only way to know is through testing. And unfortunately, doctors don't even test your stomach acid levels. What we do with our clients in the Love and Trust Your Guts program is we run qPCR DNA stool testing, and we're actually able to see through a couple of markers where your stomach acid levels are at. But furthermore, then we want to ask the question why, right? Why might you have low stomach acid? It's in your gut and your body's best interest to produce this enzyme so it can break down your foods, right? When it isn't there, those foods end up sitting in the gut, they rot, they ferment, they create this gas buildup, and that's one of the reasons why we bloat, right? It can also put pressure on the valve between our stomach and esophagus, and we end up getting this acid reflux or GERD, right? We can fart it out. It can get stuck in the intestines and we get that trapped gas, a lot of the times looking like we're 9 months pregnant, right? And so it's not in your body's best interest to not be producing enough stomach acid. So it wouldn't just stop working all of a sudden. There's a reason why. It's cause and effect. That's a symptom of something. And the most common thing that we see is gut infections like H. pylori, like parasites, that will actually suppress your acid production for the purpose of being able to stay in your gut and continue to thrive, right? They love living in your gut. They can live there rent-free. You're going to feed them. It's warm and cozy. They're like, yes, right? Love it. Give me more. And so they want to stay there. And one of the ways they do that is they dismantle your body's defense mechanism, which one of them is your stomach acid. And their stomach acid is what makes it a non-hospitable environment, right? And so if there's no stomach acid, they get to stay. And so when we are seeing someone struggling with something like protein, and they're concerned about low stomach acid, and or we test and we find out, yes, in fact, there's not enough enzyme production going on here, we immediately ask why, and we start looking for the infection behind that. And so, Paula, if you're really looking to kind of dive into that and figure out where your stomach acid levels are at, I'm going to really encourage you to connect with me again. Let's chat. We'll jump on a phone call together, no charge. Okay. We offer complimentary calls to be able to go through your symptoms, figure out what might be missing, and then we can discuss how we can best support you. But testing is going to be really important if you are someone who is in this type of situation. Okay. And what you'll find is that it really allows you to get specific and detailed with your supplement. Even if you have low stomach acid, guys, we rarely supplement with an enzyme, okay? And I share this because many people are running out there and just buying enzymes and chugging the bottles of supplements, and it's still not helping, right? if you have an infection like H. pylori, supplementing with stomach acid, hydrochloric acid will actually make that infection worse. So please, for the love of God, stop throwing supplements at this. And it's time for us to get really dialed in, get the data back from our body, and start working through the pecking order to fixing this. What we find is when we really get to the infection level, we start removing the infection, then the stomach acid levels bounce back on their own. And then what that means is when you start integrating these foods back in, you start feeling more confident to do so, and you eat them, and then you're like, oh, I actually feel pretty good after having that food. Then the confidence starts to come back. And that is the exact process we see our clients take, is that snowball effect of integrating more and more foods successfully without reaction, because we went to the infection level. Okay, so Paula, let's connect. Let's chat about some testing to figure out what's going on inside your gut that's making it scary to add the protein in. One other thing I want to touch on protein though is if you're someone who knows you have low stomach acid, or you're having very real symptoms post meal after consuming some type of protein, I want to give you a bit of a trick, and I want to teach you what I teach my clients and kind of easing back into the protein world. And the first thing that I want you to do when you're coming from no protein, like Paula here, and Paula, I want you to, start adding these in right away, is instead of going from no protein to like a steak, I like to start with like liquid or really easy to digest proteins. And so one of my favorite things is gelatin powder. And I really, the brand, I'm not affiliated or anything, but Great Lakes gelatin powder. They just have a good quality product. And what you can do is you can easily boost the foods that you're eating with this protein, right? So about a tablespoon is going to get you 10 grams of protein. If we were to change nothing about your first meal, your breakfast here that you shared, assuming the oatmeal and ground flax is okay when you eat it, if that's not, pissing off the bacteria, you could even just add 1 to 2 tablespoons of that gelatin powder and mix it into the oatmeal when it's cooking, and bam, 10 to 20 grams of protein you've just added into your breakfast. And again, you didn't have to eat a big steak. You didn't have to eat a piece of chicken. And it's not about, not eating the actual meat. That's our preference to get you to these whole food protein sources. But it's a great way to slowly ease your gut into adding these proteins back in. Then I would say, by lunch and dinner, keep it to like fish, wild caught fish, salmon, for example. Or if you need something even leaner, lower in fat, like tilapia or haddock, the whitefish. I'm not a fan of cod. I'm not a fan of fish in general, but like cod is, I just decided cod ain't it, guys. At least for me, I'm not a fan, okay? But those types of whitefish are perfectly fine. Or other lean proteins like chicken breast, right? Those are going to be the next great step in towards adding in more proteins back into your world. Eventually you can get to the steaks, the ground beefs, and things of that nature. But start with some of these more liquid proteins or powdered proteins via gelatin. I will just add in here, because I always end up getting asked when I talk to my clients about gelatin, but I'm not a fan of collagen for the purpose of replacing proteins or for healing the gut, okay? Collagen is best for hair, skin, nails, okay? There's nothing wrong with collagen. It's just best for hair, skin, nails. It is also not a complete protein. It's missing one of the amino acids, okay? And so we need to really be consuming things in complete protein so your body can best absorb it and utilize it as a protein. And so gelatin is a little bit more effective at helping to heal up the gut and gut lining. And it is a complete protein, which is why it is my recommendation if we're looking to boost our protein content in our meals, okay? Treat collagen like a hair, skin, and nail booster, okay? If you want long, strong nails and you want to get these little hairs growing back, then collagen's where you want to go, okay? All right, guys. Paula, I hope that's helpful. Reach out to me if you've got any questions. Guys, I'm going to do one more food journal review here. And I think that we'll wrap it. Anyone who has submitted their food journals and we haven't had a chance to get to them today, do not worry. We'll do another one of these lives. I will get to everyone. And if you're someone who's watching and you want me to review your food journal, then shoot me a message. Let's chat. We'll get you lined up for a future Facebook Live where we will do your food journal. Okay? And I was going to say something else, but I lost it. It'll come back to me. Anyways, oh, I know what I was going to say. I would love to review a food journal of someone who, or several, someone who has had their gallbladder removed. If you are someone who has had their gallbladder removed and you're struggling with your food, your doctor's told you to eat low fat, you're still struggling with diarrhea, constipation, abdominal pain, liver pain, whatever's going on, I would love to support you and help review your food journal, okay? So I'll review anyone's, but particularly if your gallbladder's been lopped out by the doctor, reach out to me. Let's get you some support. Okay, next food journal. Let's go into the next one here. I have Natalia. Hey, Natalia. Let's dive in. So let me just jump down here. I'm going to review so the current symptoms were gassy in the evening, especially after meals, and loose bowels, especially in the morning. And bowel movements are about 3 to 4 times before noon. Okay, so as always, know that there's always going to be some component that's happening internally from a gut standpoint, infection, damage, deficiency level. It's never, our symptoms are never caused from just one sole thing. Everything is multifactorial. Okay, so we're going to look through the lens of food today, and I don't want us to just totally forget about the fact that you have loose stools and you're going 3 to 4 times in the morning and your gut is that sensitive. Even if you're consuming something via food that is triggering that, your gut shouldn't be that sensitive. And so there is still some type of damage, deficiency, infection in the gut that needs addressing, okay? Same thing, gassiness in the evenings, especially after meals. So that's what we're gunning for. That's what I'm looking for from a food standpoint. What is causing this? All right, let's start from the top. So breakfast, this was happened to be a Thursday you were tracking. So breakfast was coffee with creamer. All right, Natalia, I know you know what I'm about to say. And everyone in the back, where do we need to have it every single meal? We want a protein, a fat, a carb, a vegetable. All right, now creamer, I don't know how much you're putting in there. I don't know if it's like real creamer. What I mean by real creamer, I mean like a good quality, like it's actual cream, or, you know, there's a lot of, I don't drink coffee, so I don't even know the names of these brands, but there are like creamer products for coffees out there, which are really just like guar gum and like xanthan, like all these gums to make this kind of thick texture with a bunch of natural flavors and then preservatives. So I'm not sure what the creamer is, but assuming it's like a real cream, okay, I'm going to say that is going to count as your fat. All right, now coffee from a protein, fat, carb, vegetable standpoint, it's like a freebie. It doesn't fall into any of those categories. So here's what I would say right off the hop. If by chance, because I'm noticing on the following days, or at least the next day, you also just had coffee with cream for breakfast. The third day you did get breakfast in. We can chat about that in a minute. But if by chance, in the mornings when you're waking up, if you're not feeling hungry, we're going to talk about that for a moment. If you're someone who's watching this and you don't have an appetite in the morning, this is for you too. Now, lack of appetite first thing in the morning can be associated with a few different things. One of the most common things that I see is H. pylori infection being the culprit behind this. Now, H. pylori is a gut infection that will suppress our appetite. Remember, it's also one of the gut infections that will suppress our stomach acid levels. It is responsible, it's like that underlying infection that's often one of the key contributors behind things like gastritis, GERD, acid reflux, Barrett's esophagus, though all of those types of things, hernias. We got to like talk about H. pylori, okay? But H. pylori, again, it suppresses our appetite. And so I often will hear people say, I'm just not hungry in the morning. that can be one of the main reasons why. Now, there's a few other reasons why too. Sometimes we'll see a zinc deficiency that can create that lack of appetite in the morning. And the third thing is a dysregulated nervous system. So if you're someone who wakes up in the morning, you're feeling really anxious and you're having a hard time kind of getting the day started because of that anxiety, and or just like the mornings feel a little bit tricky, know that that suppresses our appetite. So when we're anxious and there's a stress response that's been activated, our body turns off the light switch to rest and digest and turns on the light switch to fight or flight. And so when we get into fight or flight, what happens is all of your body's systems get shut down in the middle for like digestion, breaking down foods, rest, right? And all of the energy gets sent to the limbs to be able to run away from danger. And so if we are running away from danger, if the body is in that stress response where it's like, we gotta flee, the last thing that your body's gonna feel is a hunger cue, right? So I just wanted to share that if by chance the morning or breakfast is feeling tricky because you just don't feel hungry, those are the three things that I would start with looking into and work from those places first. And then the same thing I mentioned earlier with Paula is I was saying, easing yourself into proteins. I actually take the same approach with food for my clients that don't have appetite, especially in the morning. We start with those really simple breakfasts, like a chia pudding parfait with protein added to it via gelatin or protein powders or bone broth, and start with liquid form or real light, easy to digest, protein balanced breakfasts, and then slowly start building out to the more eggs, sweet potato, eggs and hash kind of thing, like a bigger breakfast. All right. So there's that. I just wanted to share that. Now, let me go back to your symptoms here for a moment, because one of the things that you shared is really key here. And you said that your bowel movements are, loose, and they happen first thing in the morning, like 3 to 4 bowel movements before noon. I'm going to apologize in advance. No one ever wants to hear this, but I'm pretty sure your coffee's got to go. Well, hold on here. We can make it happen. Just stay with me. Okay. Coffee is a bowel stimulant. And for someone who errs on the side of loose stools, coffee or that extra stimulation never feels good because you're like, I don't need any help in that department. If you're someone who's constipated and you're drinking coffee, you're cheating, my friends. If your poop is coming in the morning after your morning cup of joe, that's cheating. I'm half kidding here, but truthfully, a lot of people are riding on their coffee to help them poop. In this case for you, Natalia, you don't need any help in that department. And so it's possible that morning coffee is stimulating your bowels a little too much. Having said that, as I mentioned earlier, your bowels really shouldn't be that sensitive. And when our bowels are that sensitive, it's usually because there's something in there that's already pissing things off. And then we add a stimulant in, it's just too much. The body is like, okay, I guess we're purging now, right? Because I cannot deal with all this. I can't deal with the stressors. In other words, I can't deal with the infections, feeding off of my blood and eating my nutrients and suppressing my acid production, and then a cup of coffee on top of that, stimulating that peristalsis, right? So here's what I would suggest, because I know I'm not a coffee drinker, but I hear that coffee drinkers love their coffee and never like to hear that maybe we should swap it. One, either move the timing of your coffee and see if you can move it to a little bit later in the day, like later in the morning, see if that makes a difference in the quantity of stool or the timing of your stool. 2, try taking it out for a short period. See if that changes your bowel movements for now, okay? 3, look into coffee alternatives. I would say at minimum, get a good quality coffee. Most coffees are garbage, right? Most coffees are laden with mold and toxins. And it's not that coffee is bad per se, but the quality of the coffee is extremely important. And many people are drinking, coffee from, I'm in Canada, so Tim Hortons or Starbucks or wherever you get your cup of joe, right? And we're getting it from these places that put them in plastic cups, right? Even if it looks like a paper cup, it's actually lined with plastic on the inside. That's how your coffee doesn't leak through the paper, okay? And then we put a plastic lid on top that's trapping all of the heat in this plastic, and they're using tap water, which is often laden with bacteria, pathogens, heavy metals, environmental toxins. The list is long of what's in our tap water. And then they're using moldy coffee, right? So this is a really, really crummy combination. So the least thing that we can do is switch to a better quality coffee. A brand that you might like to look into, a couple of them, Cafe Man. You can look into Organo. You can look into Bulletproof. Those are the main ones that are coming to me on the top of my head that are mold free, all right? But try a mold-free, better quality coffee. Purity Coffee, that's another one. And see how you feel. The next step would be the complete coffee-free alternatives like Dandy Blend. A lot of our clients actually love Dandy Blend. It's completely coffee caffeine free. It has dandelion root in it, so it actually is supportive of the liver. It's gluten-free, so for those that are sensitive to gluten, that can be a great alternative. But just play around with your coffee and see if that makes a difference, okay? Now, let me be clear. Taking out, coffee is not the problem. Remember, the infections that are likely in the gut there, they have to be addressed. They're just what's making your body struggle to tolerate the stimulant that is coffee. So I want us to reconnect because I want to check in on where you're at with your gut infections and how you're working on those things. But you'll want to definitely look into what's going on in your gut and work on that too. This is where I'll often hear people say, oh, well, I took that food out for a little bit and it works for a little bit and then my symptoms come back. Well, yes, of course. You could take coffee out and it might help reduce some of your symptoms, right? We're trying to manage some of the symptoms, but until you get to the root of the matter, those symptoms will come back. So I'm not pretending that this is gonna just fix it all for you. It's just one thing that you might wanna look into, okay? All right. Let's keep rocking and rolling here. I want to look at dinners here because one of the other symptoms you had shared was that you were getting this gassiness in the evening, especially after meals. So, day one, dinner, cucumber and salmon spread, 2 hard-boiled eggs with mustard. So protein, fat, carb, veg. Remember, this is the lens we're looking through. So protein, you've got some salmon and you've got 2 hard-boiled eggs. So that's a great balance of protein between the two of those food groups. Fat, you had shared with me, I think it was cream cheese is what you were putting in with the salmon spread. So cream cheese would be your fat, right? So protein, fat, carb, no carb, vegetable, cucumbers, which cucumbers are obviously a vegetable, but they're practically drinking water. And so it's fine, again, if you have the odd light meal like this, but I do really want you working on getting some more vegetables in, okay? Day 2, dinner, sous vide chicken thighs and garlic sauce, rice and quinoa blend. So what do we got here? We got protein in your chicken thighs, fat. I'm going to assume maybe there's something in the way of fat in that garlic sauce. Maybe there's some oil. There might not be, but I'm assuming maybe there's some fat there. Carb, you've got a rice and quinoa blend. No vegetables. Okay. Now I'm assuming you're probably scared to eat the vegetables, maybe because of your looser stools, but we do want the vegetables in there. They're part of what's going to help to keep the intestines clean, and you need those micronutrients. Day 3, dinner with salmon and sweet potato with ghee and cinnamon. So again, salmon, protein, sweet potato, carb, ghee is going to be your fat. So we're still missing a vegetable here. So here's what I would have to say is what you might like to try. It's interesting to me that breakfasts are usually pretty light or not happening. Lunch is usually pretty light. So day 1, you had 2 pieces of hearts of palm with garlic spread. And day 2 was turkey sandwich. Day 3 was roasted broccoli and chicken breast. So with the exception of that turkey sandwich, oh, I'm losing you guys here. With the exception of that day 2 with the sandwich, lunches are usually pretty light, carb free. Okay. Now I remember we don't want to take out any carbs. We really need each of the food categories, but what we want you to play around with is certain infections will react to different types of food categories. So as I mentioned with Paula earlier, certain infections are going to be reactive to grains. And we don't like taking out any foods, to be clear. But what we want to play around with, if you're not addressing the gut infections yet, is how can we minimize the reactions? And so I'm going to say temporarily play around with swapping out the grains and see how you feel with non-grain based carbs. So for example, that night where you had for dinner, the sous vide chicken, the garlic sauce, and the rice quinoa blend, what would be interesting to see is swapping out the grains and doing again, sweet potato, squash, white potato, try those types of grain-free carbs, and then still have the chicken, add in your vegetable, okay? See how you feel with that, because it's possible that it's just reactive to the grain, and also rice, quinoas are like raw material, raw food that tend to have a ton of heavy metals, especially arsenic. Sometimes we're reacting to the heavy metal on that grain and not necessarily the grain itself. So another alternative you could try is soaking your rice and quinoa and seeing how you feel after giving you a good soak and clean before cooking and eating it. Okay, so the big thing for you here, Natalia, is we got to get breakfast going, okay? And I want you to start with focusing on breakfast first, because the rest of the day is working pretty well. You're getting fairly balanced. 1, we need to increase your vegetables, and 2, you can play around with your nighttime grains or carbs, just swapping out those carbs and see how you feel. But the most important thing is your breakfast. And when we're talking about gut and healing the gut, protein is king. Protein is so, so critical. And it's the number 1 category that we see people undereat. And so what I want you to aim to do is get in 30 grams of protein first thing in the morning is the goal. This is a great goal for everyone, not just Natalia, okay? But 30 grams of protein first thing in the morning. And that sounds like a lot, but we can accomplish that fairly easily. Let me give you an example. If you were to have 2 hard-boiled eggs, that's going to get you about 11 to 12 grams of protein, depending on the size of the eggs, right? And then let's say you decided you're still not ready for a big, huge breakfast. You could do 2 hard-boiled eggs, and then you could make a nice cup of bone broth or golden milk, and you could add in 1 to 2 scoops of gelatin powder. So let's say you do 2 tablespoons of gelatin powder into a cup of golden milk or bone broth. You're getting 20 grams of protein from that. So between your gelatin and your 2 eggs, you're getting 30 grams of protein, and all you're having is a cup of bone broth or golden milk and 2 hard-boiled eggs. Now, is that a completely balanced breakfast? No, but we're starting with 30 grams of protein, and as your body starts building and that hunger cue starts coming back, then we can start rounding out that meal and adding in your other categories. So that's what I would recommend starting with, and making sure you're really fueled to get started for the day, okay? All right, guys. I hope this has been so helpful. The big thing here is that when we're talking about today, what we've been really seeing is protein is going to be really, really important for everyone, really, when we're addressing the gut. Again, because protein is the building blocks to your muscle, and your gut lining is a muscle. But it can be really scary adding protein in, and even other food categories like vegetables, when we're scared of reaction and we don't know whether our gut is actually producing enough enzymes to break down the foods we're eating. And so many people end up taking these random supplements, hoping that it's going to solve their problem, only to find out that, well, their symptoms are still occurring. So if you're tired of guessing and you're finding that you've put all this money into random supplements and you're still no better off, then let's chat. Let's talk about the testing that you need to be able to figure out where your stomach acid levels are at, what infections may be wreaking havoc, and that's what's causing your stomach to be so sensitive that you're struggling to eat foods. But remember, food is not the problem. Food gets to be the fuel to heal you, and you cannot starve yourself healthy. So with that, I can't wait to continue doing these food journal reviews. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know if you've got any questions in the comments, and we will see you guys soon. Bye.